Hello all. Hope you're doing well. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you based on where you are in the globe right now. Today is the day 2 of the USISPF conference, and it's a great testimony to the indomitable spirit of our friends, John Chambers, Mukesh Aghi, and the whole USISPF team, that they haven't let a minor event like a global pandemic become an impediment to the amazing conference. It's been an amazing interaction so far, great meeting of the minds, and great discussion. So guys, great job. For those of you that I haven't met yet, I am Nandita Bakshi. I'm the President and CEO of Bank of the West, a BNP Paribas company here in the US, and I'm also a very proud member of the USISPF board. And it is my honor and privilege today to introduce to you our next guest, Ambassador Nikki Haley. A daughter of Indian immigrants, Ms. Haley is a woman of great distinction. She has the distinction of being the first woman governor in South Carolina, the first Indian American woman governor in the United States of America, not to mention the distinction of being the first Indian American to serve as the US ambassador to the United Nations. Absolutely amazing career. As her successful tenure as a governor and an ambassador would suggest, Ms. Haley is accomplished at bringing people from different backgrounds and perspectives together to serve a common purpose. And it is the skill of building this consensus and getting this done that has put her on this amazing trajectory. And the skill that makes her do this is really a wisdom that she's put out that says that she looks at her political rivals as rivals and not enemies. Great insight there. As a consummate politician and a diplomat, Ms. Haley knows the art of compromise, but she's equally skilled at holding her own. She has the smarts to know which battles to pick. So for example, at the Senate confirmation to the United Nations position, she let her teenage son wear sneakers while she allowed him to wear sneakers while she made him wear a formal suit. I thought that was brilliant. Thank you, Ambassador Haley. And the title of her recent book, With All Due Respect, she suggests that she will speak with respect, but she will speak her mind. But important as her political and diplomatic skills are, it's her personal charm and grace that I find so appealing. So let me share a personal story with you that explains why I feel she's got so much grace. I met Ms. Haley, then Governor Haley, in South Carolina when I was at TD heading up the consumer bank, and we were setting up a big operations in her state. She welcomed us with open arms, and she and her team made it very easy for us to move a substantial portion of our operating center over to South Carolina, which I'm told today is still a thriving business and a regional office for TD. Years later, I met her when I am, as a CEO of Bank of the West, I met her at a JPM conference where she was keynoting. We looked at each other from a distance, and it only took a few minutes to break away from the conversations she was having to come and greet me personally. If that is not charm, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know what is, and I absolutely love her for this. Speaking to her would be Ajay Banga, Mastercard CEO, a colleague, a mentor, and a personal friend. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been waiting for this conversation, so let me not take any more time and turn it over to Ajay and Ambassador Haley. Welcome them, please.
Thank you. And Nandita, thank you very much. And Ambassador Haley, I want to start by thanking you for your service and your commitment. But even more, I got to tell you, I have 2 girls and they're grown up, and you're like a rock star in my house. So I think that's where I'm going to start from, that you've accomplished so much and you're such a role model for so many others. What do you think you're most proud of? There's a lot, I know, but give me a couple of ideas. Give me a couple of thoughts.
Well, I love that you have two girls in your house. It's such a pleasure to be with you. It's all about strong girls. So I'm glad that you're raising them strong and we can expect great things from them. I'm proud of a lot of things, but I think at the end of the day, I'm most proud of being a daughter, being a mom, being a sister, being a wife. Those are the things that you take with you at the end of the day is your family and your love of family. So that is what I'm proud of. Yes, I've had some career accomplishments. But those at the end of the day, that's more of a tribute to my parents than anyone. They always taught us that whatever you do, be great at it and make sure that people remember you for it. And I've always said that my parents sacrificed so much to come here. And I feel like it's the best way to honor them is to just make sure that I'm giving as much back and doing as much as I can to improve the country, to help the country, and to help the people around me. All of that goes to my parents, and I'm just proud to be their daughter and hope that they're proud of what I've done.
Well, your personal approach and your humility shows through in every word that you just used to answer. And I think that's part of why you are who you are. And I wish I could find a different way to tell you this again, but I congratulate you on who you are and what you've done. So let me move a little differently into something out of personal, into India and the US. And I just believe that this whole idea of the US and India coming closer together, the what's now called the Indo-Pacific strategy, uh, I've been saying for a long time, we belong together in so many ways, these two countries. And we've been doing this now for about 3 years into the Indo-Pacific strategy angle. How do you think we're doing? What progress do you think we've made? What kind of challenges do you still see ahead of us? And give us your perspective on that, because you were very much a part of the team that architected the idea of this Indo-Pacific strategy.
Well, I think that when this administration took on the Indo-Pacific strategy, it was a real game changer for a lot of reasons. I had often thought that the U.S. seemed to ally a little bit more with Pakistan and a little bit less with India, and I think it just makes sense that the U.S. India are natural allies. We have the same values. We both believe in democracy. I think that we also have a lot of gifts and talents that we can give each other. And so I very much was a voice of trying to strengthen the Indian-US relationship for what we could do for each of the countries. I mean, I think we both could benefit each other. I think the president very much saw that as well. And so the Indo-Pacific strategy was one, acknowledging something that should have been there all along, which is the U.S. and India should be natural allies. But I think it also acknowledged that U.S. and India have the same threat in China. And so it was a way of saying we're going to start looking at things differently. And I think that we've seen that play out with the alliance that we see with the United States, India, Australia, and Japan. I think we're continuing to see that strengthen. And so from a military standpoint, I think that the US and India have done well. I think from, constantly trying to work towards human rights and trying to work culturally, even through COVID, we've done well. I think we still have some work to do on trade, obviously, and I'm hoping that we can break down some of those barriers that India has with tariffs on the United States, but I think that we'll get there as well, too. I think that this has been groundbreaking for a number of reasons, and I think we have to continue to build on that, because as we look at threats that we have, mutual threats, whether it's with China or what India has seen with Pakistan and going forward, I think it's all the more reason why we should find other ways to be strengthened and work together.
Yeah. Let me come back to China a little later in the conversation, but could I just pick up on you mentioned human rights and I know you spoke about US-India relations back in 2018. I'm going to quote from here. It said, our two countries share indispensable commitments to the rule of law, the fundamental freedoms expressed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and a free and open international system. I think as these institutional freedoms are threatened across the globe in the last few years, more so, how can the US and India partner closer together to continue promoting these shared commitments towards the fundamental freedoms and a free and open international system? What else do you think we could do together? Where could we head together in this game?
Well, I think that the US and India both have to acknowledge that sometimes we fall when it comes to human rights, and there are things that we can do better. And I think that's where we can both challenge each other to continue to be better on those fronts. But I think we do acknowledge rule of law. And the one thing that sets the US and India apart is that democratic countries by nature value life and value human rights and value the status of people in the world and trying to lift them up. It's the undemocratic countries that we see, and when you look at China, you see this, that when they're authoritarian, when they're becoming more of dictatorships, and you see that with the million Muslim Uyghurs that are being imprisoned in concentration camps, with the Hong Kong protesters being arrested. You look in Iran and the LGBT community, they're being arrested, or you look in other areas and you start to see in Russia, if they see something wrong or if they speak against their government, they're arrested or even killed in those processes. That's where US and India shine, is that we do talk about the value of human rights, and we do acknowledge that when you are a country that believes in rule of law and when you're a country that believes in human rights, it makes you a stronger country around the world, more respected and stronger in the way that we work. And so I think we should always challenge each other to continue to do that. The United States has always had a very loud voice when it comes to human rights, and we would actually welcome India to be even louder on that in terms of talking about the importance of human rights as it leads to success of any country.
I agree. I've said often that if you sort of look at the world's geographies from Lebanon through Southeast Asia, the one country that could be such a strong, fast friend of the US in terms of values, conduct, and behavior is clearly India. And so that is exactly the kind of role that they could evolve over time into. And I think it'll be a great opportunity together. So I know you think the same. So I'm kind of preaching to the converted, as they would say. Can I move a little bit away from this to the idea of trust and relationships? It's kind of where I was going with this. I believe that leadership is about building trust. Leadership is about living up to your word. Leadership is about your track record and your relationships. And I see that between the two countries of India and the US, the leaders, not just at the top, but even lower down, have begun to build enormous relationships, enormous trust with each other. And that is quite interesting to me. So I'm trying to figure out, over the years, the last 20 years that you've been in public spaces as well, you've seen this change and this relationship has improved steadily. What do you think is happening here? What do you think is making this relationship so unique between the two leaders now? And what do you think is bringing that trust? And what do you think is driving this rapprochement and this growth together, aside from the shared feeling of geopolitical being in the same space? What else could it be?
I really do think our values are very similar. I think that they've aligned, but I think that the reason the U.S. has aligned more with India, I would like to think, is because Americans see the value of Indian citizens in our country. I've often said that when you look at the Indian community, what makes me so proud is, we are the minority that is highest educated. We're the minority that has the highest per capita income. We're the minority that's least dependent on government assistance. And the one that makes me so proud, we're the minority that is the most philanthropic of any minority in the country. And so America sees the value of Indians in our country. And this plays out multiple ways, in real time. If you look, we have Chinese students and we have Indian students. Well, we know that we have to worry about the Chinese students in these Confucius institutes because we know they're taking information back to their governments and using it in a negative way. When we see Indian students, we don't feel that way. We know that this is talent that is coming into the country. We know it's not going to be used for harm. It's going to be used to continue to build, whether it's here in America or India, and have a relationship. And so we see those ways of doing that. And I think that makes a big difference in in how we go forward. And so I think that there has been a trust level. I think that there is a level where we have seen real results, not just words and talking about what Indians can do for America or what Americans can do for India. I think it's been by shared values and shared results and trust along the way. And I think that, a lot has to be given to the idea that President Modi and President Trump have developed a very special working relationship, one of trust and one of the fact that they are both committed to moving our countries forward. And I think that that's something to be said where you can tell that there's a lot of confidence there. And then even look in the militaries, you've got, or look at our businesses. With Chinese businesses, we know if American businesses do business in China, they have to cooperate with the Chinese military. If Americans do business in India, there's no threat of having to be watched or be pressed by the Indian military. So it's just a different way of doing business. And I think just in business, you want to do business with people that are most like you. I think that's the same in country politics. You want to do business and ally with those that are most like you. And I think that Americans see Indians in that respect. And I hope that Indians see Americans in that respect, because I think we can learn from each other. And I think we very much value each other.
And I think that point about trust, about how Indian students, Indian visitors, Indian business and American business behave, that's an interesting topic. And I'm going to ask you a question about the diaspora, and then I'm going to ask you another question there about how I believe we can do more. So, and that'll lead to China again. So let me ask you this one. There's approximately 4 million Indians here in Indian diaspora in America. And what kind of thoughts and expectations do you have about the role that talented community that you were just referring to can continue to play here in the US? And how do you, I'm sure you've been asked this many times during your career in public service because of who you are, but how do you think about it? What do you feel about it?
Well, obviously, it's personal for me because I'm very proud of the Indian community. I'm proud of how they live. I'm proud of how they work, and I'm proud of the citizens that they have become. They very much take on American values because they're so similar to Indian values. And so it's a natural progression for them. But just as I told you about the work ethic and how they've assimilated and how they're philanthropic and all that they do, I think that there's more to be said, that we know that the talent that Indians bring to America, whether it's technology, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in teaching, whether it's in business, those are all assets to us. And those are all things that we need to continue to go forward. And so, what I would like to see is that we continue to bring, train, and use Indians in American business, in American institutions, so that we can learn from them. The only part that I see that we need more activity and more involvement in is I'd like to see the Indian community get more involved in politics. For a long time, like my parents, their job was to make life better for their children than what they had for themselves. And so they hunkered down, they sacrificed, they worked hard to build a better life for their kids. Well, this next generation should do two things. One, they should look back at the sacrifices their parents made and appreciate they have to raise the bar and go even further with those things. But secondly, now is the time to assimilate in the political realm. Whether it's Republican or Democrat, get involved. Don't just get involved by voting, but get involved by running. Get involved within government offices, in the public sector, and let people feel that, because it's such a great group of strong voices that so many people respect, that it's time for them to really take some involvement in the political arena. I think that they've certainly showed that they're capable, and it's certainly, I think that the American public is open and willing. And so that's selfishly, I'd like to see them get more involved in politics as well, because I think Indians are so good at everything they touch. It's a natural progression to have them get involved in politics as well.
I think that's a great point, actually. I believe that the more we can get involved with having a voice, the more we contribute back to this society that has given us so much. And I think there's a really good point there. I came here middle-aged and having worked as a senior middle manager in a company, and I remember that how welcomed I felt when I arrived, and how much I learned about what it was like to be an immigrant of that age. And there's so much you can contribute back with your personal learnings. That's a really important point. I have felt for a long time, Ambassador Haley, that one of the things that China did well with America, with the patronage of people in politics, but also CEOs and people who were of good social standing, is that they built some excellent institutions that have enabled over the years the exchange of views between Chinese and Americans, right from school children coming and going, college kids coming and going, bureaucrats coming and going, artists coming and going, mathematicians coming and going. The level of sort of intertwining of societies is quite remarkable. And you find many Americans helping their kids learn Mandarin, go spend a couple of years in China. I don't see enough of that yet, of that variety between America and India. And it's been a pet project of mine for years to find a way to get this going in a constructive way, not in a way to do anything other or to achieve anything other than a closer intertwining at a societal and human level, so that our countries, which deserve to be together for geopolitical and strategic reasons, do that on a foundation of societal reasons. And I wonder if you have any advice for people like us on how we could get this going.
Well, I think on one side, I think let's acknowledge how China did it. China was very strategic. This was very planned out. And America was very naive. The thought leaders in America thought that, if we were nice to China, if we helped open doors to China, that China would become more like the West, that China would become more democratic. And the lessons that have been learned, and this was from both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat leaders all thought that if we were nice to China, that there would be an alliance there. What we have to understand is the Chinese want to be communist. They've always wanted to be communist, and that's not going to change. What I do think, and again, through this Indo-Pacific strategy, but going forward, is America is learning who their real friends are. And I think that when you learn that, yes, it's India, but now Indians need to go and show more of who they are. Because I think anytime anyone comes face to face with an Indian business or comes face to face with an Indian professor or an Indian doctor, they see the warmth, they see the intelligence, they see the genuine side of them, and they want to know more. What we have to do is not be shy, but really get out there and brag on ourselves. I've always said that the Indian community, they're taught to keep their head down, work hard, and do what they need to do to give back. Now is the time for Indians to be proud and be okay talking about those accomplishments and be okay talking about their successes, and let your children talk about their accomplishments. And, we're taught to be very humble. We're taught to be very service oriented. But now is the time for us to share that success and share why we do what we do and share why we think of what we think. Because when we do that, others understand who we are better. And I think that's really important going forward, because, like I said, there's never a group that I speak to where I don't brag on the Indian community, from their education to their income levels to their philanthropic sides. And when I tell people that, they're so surprised, but they're pleasantly surprised. And those are things that we should brag about, because those that have come before us have worked so hard to reach these points. And we have to make sure that we take it to the next level. And Americans are not threatened by Indians. They realize that Indians make our country better. And so, I think that we have to not be so shy and not be so humble, but also go out there and try and share what we know we can be good at. And I think that there's a lot of different aspects, from business to education to healthcare, everything in between, that we can share that will add to this country and make people more proud of the Indian community that is here.
Yeah, I like that message about making us take some of the onus on ourselves as well, to help educate and create excitement in the community around us. you know this well because of the family you come from, but if you look the way I look and you do the kind of work I do, I periodically get these weird looks and questions. But I find if you actually lean into that and you embrace that question as a way to help educate the other person of who you are and what you stand for, you actually end up making friends. And you end up making friends that I'm still in touch with. I had a casual conversation at an airport once in the US in the middle of nowhere, literally. I was in a very small town. And I started talking to this person about who I was and my religion and where I came from. And then I went into the town for a bunch of meetings, came back, and this gentleman had downloaded material from the internet about the Sikh religion, printed it, kept it, and then took my address from me and then sent me a book that he bought off Amazon about the religion, which is fascinating for someone to do that. I'm still in touch with him. He's 41 years old and he lives in this little town. And it's amazing how you can make a friend like this. So I actually really value what you just said about taking the onus on yourself. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, and, I learned this from my parents because we were, the only Indian family in a small southern town. My father wears a turban. My mother at the time wore a sari. I always say they didn't know who we were, what we were, or why we were there. And when I would be around and I would come home after being teased, my mom would always say, your job is not to show them how you're different. Your job is to show them how you're similar. And it's amazing how that lesson I learned on the playground has played out throughout my life, whether it was in the corporate world, or whether it was, as the first female governor, or whether it was as ambassadors. When you first talk about what you have in common, everyone lets their guard down. And then you can get into what the real conversation needs to be had, and you can get towards the solution. And, we went through a very hard time. I mean, we were, my father was stared at, there was discrimination, there was heartbreak, but what I found is over time, those things changed. The more they learned about us, the more they accepted us. My father was able to teach in a school for 30 years. My mother was able to have a successful business. I was able to become governor and UN ambassador. That's all from leaning in. That's all from not being resentful about who you are and how people treat you, but being proud about who you are and educating those people on why you want them to be proud too. And so, I always say, never forget where you come from. And when you know where you come from, when you share it, other people are proud too. Give them reasons to be proud, because that's what makes America great. This is the only country in the world where you can be from anywhere, any class, any lifestyle, and you can come here and literally become whatever you want to be just by hard work. And good, genuine kindness. And we should all remember that and be proud in what we do and how we do it.
That's terrific. Well, so let me ask you a last question. I'm conscious of time. And this one's about, you were such an integral part about a global institutions, the United Nations in this case. There are lots of global institutions that got created after the Second World War, which somehow seem to have, for various reasons, in an effort to cater to the lowest common denominator of everybody's interests, or in an effort to cater to the manner in which they get funded, they seem to have lost their way, Ambassador. And I know you dealt with it intimately yourself. You must be having some learnings or advice for us, a couple of high-level thoughts. Whether it's the WTO, the WHO, the UN, so many of them. I've just become chair of the International Chamber of Commerce, and I'm seeing it firsthand as well. So any advice, any thoughts, closing thoughts from you?
What I found was certainly at the United Nations, you go in and the intention of multilateralism is a good one. It is, at the United Nations, if you put 193 countries in a room in the name of peace, that good things will happen. But what, you have to also remember is those 193 countries have different values. They don't all believe the same. They don't all think the same. They all have different priorities and they all have different strategies. And so we're not ever going to have this coming together of the minds for good. You're going to have some that have different strategies, whether it's Iran that was saying death to America, or whether it was, China that was trying to have their own strategic plan. So it doesn't always work. What you do have to do is try and find the partners and friends that think like you, act like you, and have the same goals. And when you do that in that name and move forward in not having everyone like you, but finding out what the right partnerships are to achieve those goals, that's when good things happen. That's when we were able to strengthen our relationship with India. That's where we were able to pull more on the alliance with Japan and Australia and India to come together. That's how things will continue to go forward. So I think, be smart to the strategies of other countries, be smart to the negativities of other countries, but be endeared to those that are like you and those that want to kind of do good and move in that direction. And that's the best way to make use of those organizations.
Wise words, Ambassador. I can see why you're so successful. You're both humble, smart at it, but also most importantly, you've had real experience in running a state as well as this amazing role at the United Nations. And I wish you luck. I wish you success. And I told you my children think you're a rock star, and I can see why. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and it was a pleasure to be with you.